but with your own sister. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of resilience, of one woman standing up to reclaim control of her life, even when it seemed like everything had fallen apart. Family should be a place of support, love, and trust. But what happens when the very people you should trust the most turn their backs on you? This is the reality that Rebecca Wilson had to face when her world came crashing down after discovering her husband's affair with her younger sister. It wasn't just an emotional betrayal, it was a financial one as well. And it's a story that many people can relate to in one form or another. What makes this story so important is that it's not just about surviving betrayal, it's about standing up, finding strength in yourself, and using that strength to build something better for your future. Sometimes we face situations that seem impossible, but it's how we choose to respond that defines who we are. In today's video, we're going to take you through Rebecca's journey, a journey of heartbreak, anger, and eventual empowerment. This story will inspire you to look within yourself for the courage you might not even know you have. If you've ever faced betrayal or heartbreak, this one's for you. Rebecca Wilson, at 34 years old, had always dreamed of having a stable, loving family. She was a dedicated teacher, a mother of 2 beautiful children, and married to her college sweetheart, Dan. Life was simple but fulfilling. She had built everything with her own hands: the home, the family, and the future she had always envisioned. Dan, her husband of 11 years, was the man she thought she knew inside and out. They weren't perfect, of course, but they had built a life together. They'd raised their 2 children, Sophie, and shared countless family moments. Rebecca felt secure in the life they'd created. It was a steady routine of school days, family dinners, and quiet weekends. Then there was Mandy, Rebecca's younger sister. Mandy had always been the wild one, ambitious, career-driven, and always seeking excitement in her life. She was a marketing professional who traveled frequently for work, lived in a trendy apartment in the city, and was never shy about her love for designer clothes and high-end experiences. She was everything Rebecca wasn't: outgoing, glamorous, and constantly on the move, while Rebecca was happy to settle down with her family. Despite their differences, Rebecca and Mandy managed to maintain a sisterly bond. They'd attend family gatherings, share occasional phone calls, and make an effort to stay connected. It wasn't the closest relationship, but it was enough for Rebecca. At least that's what she told herself. Looking back, Rebecca realized there were small signs that she had missed, things she hadn't noticed until it was too late. Dan's eyes often lingered on Mandy longer than they should. His laugh was a little too loud when she made jokes, and he seemed to always find excuses to be around her. But trust, as Rebecca soon learned, can blind you to what you don't want to see. Despite all these small signs, Rebecca never expected that her perfect life would unravel so quickly. She never imagined that her own sister would betray her in the most unimaginable way. But one fateful Thursday, her world came crashing down in an instant. It all began on a regular Thursday last spring, when Rebecca had borrowed Dane's laptop to order gifts for their son Jack's birthday. As she browsed through websites, an email notification caught her eye. It was a hotel confirmation for a resort stay at Silver Lake Resort, with a date that coincided with a weekend Dan had told her he would be at a financial conference in Chicago. Rebecca's stomach twisted with unease. Her sister Mandy had mentioned a girls' trip around that same time, and the pieces started to fall into place. Rebecca's mind raced. Could it be? She opened the email and quickly scanned through the details. It didn't take long before she uncovered something she couldn't ignore. The email wasn't just a booking confirmation, it was a piece of the puzzle that, when put together, revealed a deep betrayal. Unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, Rebecca started digging into Dan's messages. She hesitated at first. She had never thought of snooping before, but her gut told her something was terribly off. What she found in Dan's inbox sent her heart crashing to the floor. Messages between him and Mandy, intimate, loving messages that no one should ever read, let alone a betrayed wife. The messages were damning. Pictures, plans for the future, even complaints about Rebecca, about their life together. Dan had written to Mandy, "Becca doesn't understand me like you do. We've grown apart. So I'm just going through the motions." The words stung like a slap in the face. It wasn't just an affair. It was the realization that the man she loved, the father of her children, had been emotionally disconnecting from her for much longer than she realized, and he had found solace in her own sister. Rebecca couldn't breathe. She felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. In a daze, she closed the laptop and set it in front of Dan when he came home that evening. His face drained of color when he saw the screen. The silence in the room was deafening. "I didn't want you to find out this way," Dan said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. No apologies, no explanations, just a resignation that hung in the air. Rebecca discarded cry. "Not yet." The shock was too overwhelming. Instead, she looked at him, a mixture of disbelief and anger swirling inside her. That night, there was no confrontation. There were no accusations or fighting. Rebecca simply stared at him, the man she had trusted for over a decade, and realized how little she truly knew about him. He had been living a double life, one with her, and one with her sister. The next few weeks were a blur. Lawyers. Custody discussions. The heart-wrenching task of explaining to her children why their father wasn't coming home. Jack, only 9 years old, understood more than Rebecca wished he did. "Dad loves Aunt Mandy now, but he's supposed to love you," he had said, his small face crumpling in confusion. Sophie, their 7-year-old, was still too young to fully grasp the situation, but she kept asking when Daddy was coming home, and Rebecca didn't have any good answers. Dan moved out quickly, staying at a hotel before eventually moving in with Mandy. The couple made no effort to hide their relationship. 2 months after Rebecca's world fell apart, Dan and Mandy went public on social media, posting pictures of their happy life together. It was a public declaration of their love, leaving Rebecca to pick up the pieces of her shattered family. As the months passed, Rebecca found herself living in a painful new reality. Dan and Mandy were no longer hiding their relationship. In fact, they flaunted it. So they attended family gatherings as a couple, showing no shame or hesitation. Rebecca had to face them at every turn, all while struggling to rebuild her life. It wasn't just that Dan and Mandy were together, it was the casual cruelty of their actions. Mandy, who was now living in the city with Dan, posted pictures of their new life together on social media. She would share intimate moments of their days, like their trips to local cafes or their cozy nights at home. For Rebecca, each picture felt like a slap in the face. It was as if Mandy was showing the world that she had won, that she had taken what was once hers. But it wasn't just the pictures, it was the way they acted in public. Dan and Mandy didn't seem to care about the effect their relationship had on Rebecca or their children. They would show up at family events, laughing and holding hands while Rebecca tried her best to keep her composure. The awkwardness of those situations was palpable. Rebecca could feel the judgment of other family members, but no one said anything. No one dared to challenge Mandy or Dan. After all, they were the happy couple now. Rebecca struggled with anger, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal. She couldn't understand how her sister, of all people, could betray her in such a devastating way. It was one thing to lose her husband, but to lose her sister's love and loyalty felt like a blow that she would never recover from. For Rebecca, the hardest part wasn't just facing Dan and Mandy's public displays of affection, it was the effect it had on her children. Jack and Sophie were adjusting to the new reality of their father living with Aunt Mandy. Jack, who was mature for his age, would ask questions that Rebecca didn't know how to answer. "Why is Daddy with Aunt Mandy? Why can't he come home?" Sophie, on the other hand, was confused and kept asking when her dad would return. Rebecca didn't have the answers they needed, and it tore her apart. Despite the pain, Rebecca tried her best to be strong for her kids. She knew she couldn't allow them to see her crumble, but there were days when she felt completely alone. Dan and Mandy's blatant disregard for the hurt they had caused left Rebecca feeling isolated and betrayed by everyone she had once trusted. Amid the emotional chaos, there was one person who truly saw Rebecca's pain and stood by her unconditionally: her grandmother, Ellie. Grandma Ellie was the matriarch of the family, a strong, no-nonsense woman who had built a successful business with her late husband and raised 3 children of her own. She was the person Rebecca had always turned to for wisdom and support, the one who could always be relied upon to speak the truth, no matter how hard it was to hear. One Sunday evening, when Rebecca was at her lowest point, Grandma Ellie called. "Come to dinner, just you and the kids. Peter will be there too," she said, her voice firm yet gentle. Peter was Uncle Peter, Rebecca's father's brother. Although they weren't particularly close, Rebecca trusted him. Rebecca almost turned down the invitation. She could barely get out of bed some mornings, let alone attend a family gathering. But there was something about Grandma Ellie's voice, a certain determination in her words, that made Rebecca feel like she couldn't refuse. Grandma Ellie wasn't just inviting her to dinner, she was making it clear that she wasn't going to let Rebecca go through this alone. When they arrived at Grandma Ellie's Victorian home, the familiar smell of roast chicken and rosemary potatoes immediately comforted Rebecca. The house felt like a sanctuary, filled with warmth and love. Jack and Sophie raced to the backyard where Grandma Ellie had set up a new swing set, their laughter filling the air and reminding Rebecca of the joys in life, even amidst the heartache. Grandma Ellie sat Rebecca down with a glass of wine and insisted, "Tell me everything. I want to know exactly what that grandson-in-law of mine has done." Rebecca didn't hold back. She told Ellie everything: the affair, the messages, the pain of having to explain to her children that their father was now living with her sister. She spoke of the humiliation of facing colleagues and neighbors who all knew about Mandy and Dan's betrayal. "And now they want me to babysit their kids while they go house hunting together." Rebecca's voice broke as she finally allowed herself to feel the weight of everything she'd been holding in. "How am I supposed to move on when they're acting like nothing happened?" As Rebecca spoke, Grandma Ellie's face grew increasingly stern, her normally warm blue eyes turning cold with anger. After a moment of silence, Ellie asked, "And what about the inheritance?" Rebecca blinked in confusion. "Inheritance? What do you mean?" Ellie exchanged a glance with Uncle Peter before turning back to Rebecca. "The trust fund for you and Mandy? The shares in the family business. I set that up years ago, before you and Dan got married." Rebecca was stunned. "I don't know anything about this trust fund." "Of course you don't," Ellie muttered, her face darkening. "Dan convinced me to give him control of your portion 3 years ago. Said he was investing it for your future, your children's college funds." Rebecca's head was spinning. How much money was involved? "How much are we talking about?" she asked, almost afraid to know the answer. "Enough," Uncle Peter said gently. "Enough that you shouldn't be worrying about making mortgage payments on a teacher's salary while raising 2 kids on your own." The truth hit Rebecca like a ton of bricks. Not only had Dan betrayed her emotionally, but he had also taken control of her financial future, draining the trust fund that was meant to provide for her children. It was a betrayal that went beyond the heartache she had already endured. Grandma Ellie stood up abruptly. "I need to see the paperwork," she said. "Peter, call Lawrence. We need to know exactly what Daniel has done with Rebecca's money." Lawrence, Rebecca would soon learn, was Grandma Ellie's lawyer. And as the weeks passed, Rebecca would discover just how far Dan had gone to deceive her, not only emotionally but financially as well. As Christmas approached, Rebecca found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, there was the excitement of the holiday season, and on the other, the looming dread of the family Christmas gathering at Grandma Ellie's lake house. The invitation had come, and Rebecca knew that Dan and Mandy would be there as a couple. She had already spent months navigating the painful reality of their affair, but now she had to face them together at the family event that had always been a tradition. Rebecca didn't want to go. The thought of spending Christmas with her ex-husband and her sister, the two people who had shattered her world, seemed unbearable. Yet Grandma Ellie had insisted, "Your family, Becca, and you can't hide from them forever. But you'll be fine. I have something special planned for this year." Rebecca had always looked forward to Grandma Ellie's Christmas gatherings. It was a time for family to come together, share meals, exchange gifts, and make memories. But this year, things were different. There was a knot of anxiety that tightened in Rebecca's chest every time she thought about facing Dan and Mandy. She dreaded the thought of seeing them act like the happy family they had become, while she was left trying to pick up the pieces of her broken life. Her friend Olivia had given her some advice that Rebecca held onto as the big day approached. "You don't have to go, Becca," Olivia had said over coffee. "Your mental health matters too. But if you do go, you show them exactly what they lost. Get your hair done, wear that burgundy dress that makes you feel amazing, bring that cranberry walnut bread everyone fights over, and when they try to engage with you, be devastatingly polite." "Devastatingly polite?" Rebecca had asked, half laughing despite the heaviness she felt. "Absolutely," Olivia had insisted. "It's like killing them with kindness, but with a sharper knife. No tears, no drama, just you looking fabulous, and leaving them wondering why the hell they ever thought they could take everything from you." It wasn't the worst advice, and Rebecca found herself embracing it as Christmas Eve approached. She booked a hair appointment, splurged on the burgundy dress Olivia had mentioned, and spent an entire day baking. Not just her famous cranberry walnut bread, but also chocolate peppermint cookies that Dan had always loved. Not for him, but for herself, because she made the best Christmas cookies in cedarwood. And she wasn't about to let that go. The morning of the Christmas gathering, Rebecca stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying mascara with a steady hand. For the first time in months, she didn't look like someone who had been broken. The woman staring back at her was strong, her hair falling in soft waves, her eyes clear despite the months of tears. Her shoulders were back, and there was a quiet determination in her posture. "We can do this," she whispered to her reflection. "One day at a time." Jack and Sophie, already dressed in their Christmas outfits, burst into the bathroom with excitement. "Mom, are we leaving soon? Will there be snow at Grandma's lake house? Did you pack the presents? Will Daddy be there?" Rebecca answered each question with a calm smile, marveling at how resilient her children were. Despite everything that had happened, they were still filled with hope and excitement for the holiday. It was a reminder that children adapt to their environment, they follow your lead. If Rebecca showed them stability and love, they would find their footing even when their world had shifted beneath them. As they loaded the car for the 2-hour drive to the lake house, Rebecca took one last look at their home. The house she had once shared with Dan, the home that he had walked away from. Christmas lights twinkled along the roofline, and a wreath hung perfectly centered on the front door. It was still home, just different now, quieter. But it was hers, and it was enough. The drive to the lake house passed quickly. The kids chattered in the back seat, and Christmas music played softly on the radio. But as they turned onto the familiar gravel road leading to Grandma Ellie's property, Rebecca felt the knot of anxiety tighten once again. She reminded herself of Olivia's words, devastatingly polite. She could do this. When they arrived, the circular driveway was already lined with cars: Uncle Peter's SUV, some cousin sedans, and of course, Dan's beam parked beside a sleek red convertible Rebecca recognized as Mandy's. They had arrived together. Of course they had. As Sophie squealed with excitement, "Daddy's here." And Jack added with confusion, "And Aunt Mandy?" Rebecca plastered on her best teacher smile. "Yes, they're here. Remember what we talked about? We're going to have a wonderful Christmas with the whole family. Everyone will be kind and respectful to each other because that's what families do at Christmas." She didn't say what was really on her mind. That's what sisters are supposed to do, not steal each other's husbands. Some lessons were better left untaught. The front door of the lake house burst open, and Grandma Ellie appeared, wearing her traditional Christmas apron over a festive red sweater, her silver hair swept up in an elegant twist. "There you are, darlings," she called, hurrying down the steps with more energy than many people half her age. Jack and Sophie ran to her, and Rebecca followed more slowly, her gifts and bags in hand. The warmth of Grandma Ellie's embrace was a balm for Rebecca's raw nerves. "You look beautiful," Ellie whispered, "and stronger than you know." Rebecca tried to smile. "I'm trying," she whispered back, fighting the emotion that threatened to crack her carefully constructed facade. Grandma Ellie stepped back, her eyes twinkling with a glint of something Rebecca couldn't quite place. "Some things in life are unfair, Becca, but sometimes justice finds its way regardless." Rebecca was about to ask what Ellie meant when she was ushered inside, carrying the gifts and the smell of her freshly baked bread, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and curiosity. What was this big announcement Grandma Ellie had been talking about? The big announcement Grandma Ellie had been teasing for weeks was still a mystery to Rebecca as she settled into the cozy living room of the lake house. Family members gathered around the fireplace, exchanging greetings and laughter, but Rebecca's mind was preoccupied with what was to come. Her heart raced with a mix of anticipation and fear. What could Grandma Ellie possibly have planned? As everyone sat down for the Christmas meal, Grandma Ellie stood up with her usual commanding presence. The room quieted as all eyes turned to her. She looked around the room at her family, her children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, and smiled warmly. "Family," she began, her voice strong but soft, "I know this has been a difficult year for some of us, but we have something important to share with you today." Rebecca's stomach tightened. She couldn't help but wonder what Grandma Ellie was about to say. Her mind briefly drifted to the conversation they had had a few weeks ago, when Ellie had promised there would be justice for what Dan had done to her. Was this it? Was this the moment everything would change? Grandma Ellie paused, her gaze landing on Rebecca with a knowing look. "As most of you know, I've always tried to take care of my family, especially when it comes to securing our future. The trust fund I set up for my granddaughters Rebecca and Mandy was meant to ensure that they could live comfortably and that their children would have the resources they need for the future." Rebecca's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what to expect, but hearing Ellie speak about the trust fund made her realize just how much her grandmother had planned. "And it's come to my attention," Ellie continued, "that a certain member of this family has betrayed that trust. I've had some legal matters looked into, and I've discovered the extent of the financial deceit that has taken place." Rebecca's eyes widened as she looked around the room. The weight of Grandma Ellie's words sank in. Dan had not only betrayed her emotionally, but he had also betrayed the family's trust in him. And now, thanks to Grandma Ellie, the truth was coming out. The family members exchanged confused glances, some even looking uncomfortable. It was clear that no one had expected Grandma Ellie to take such decisive action. But Rebecca felt a surge of relief and something stronger: empowerment. Her grandmother was making sure that justice was being served, not just for Rebecca, but for her children as well. "Rebecca," Grandma Ellie said, turning her attention to her granddaughter, "I want you to know that this family stands behind you. And the trust I set up for you will be restored. along with everything that was wrongfully taken. Rebecca's throat tightened. She didn't know whether to cry or laugh. In that moment she realized that, despite everything, she wasn't alone. Grandma Ellie had her back, and this wasn't the end of her story, but the beginning of a new chapter. Rebecca stood in the midst of her family, feeling a sense of strength and resolve that she had never known before. The betrayal she had endured at the hands of her husband and sister was still painful, but it no longer defined her. The events of the past months had shaken her to her core, but they had also shown her just how resilient she could be. As she looked around the room at her family, some of whom were still processing the shock of Grandma Ellie's revelation, Rebecca realized that she had taken back control of her life. This wasn't just about the money, though that was an important part of it. It was about reclaiming her sense of self, her dignity, and her future. Rebecca had learned that betrayal, while incredibly painful, was not the end of the road. In fact, it was the beginning of something new. She had learned to stand tall, to fight for herself and her children, and to trust that justice would eventually find its way. I survived this, Rebecca saw to herself, and I'll thrive because of it. As Rebecca walked out of the lake house that evening, the weight that had been on her shoulders for months felt lighter. Her heart was no longer burdened with the bitterness of betrayal. Instead, it was filled with hope for the future. Anyone watching this story, remember that no matter how deep the betrayal, how hurtful the deceit, you have the strength to rise again. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it, and sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most empowering transformations. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share this video with anyone who might need a reminder that even in our darkest moments we can find the light.